Israel is in a very real danger of going out of existence. All over the region, all of the elites privately are saying the same thing, from the Indian border all the way to Morocco in the Islamic world. Sykes-Picot is dead. It will not be restored. In other words, when this ends, this war, the map is not going to look as it did before. I don't think President Trump really understands that. And I think that Mr. Netanyahu is living in this fantasy world of the Greater Israel Project, which means that we are going to fight in perpetuity against everyone in the region, anyone in the region that refuses to submit to Israel. We're not. Those days are over. He may actually be removed from office. I'm talking about Trump. I'm also talking about Netanyahu. Of course, removing Netanyahu doesn't change thinking in Israel. They continue to believe with heart and soul. I think it seems to me that the conflicts with Russia and Ukraine, Iran and the Middle East, and ultimately what I would call a cold conflict or cold war with China have reached a turning point. And there are a lot of people that are watching all of this, and they're saying, all right, we have two hot wars, one cold war, and are they now merging into a larger, more dangerous war? And I think we have to go back and focus on the original missions of the three conflicts and then look at where we are today. When you talk about Ukraine, I mean, that mission focus hasn't changed. I would say it just hasn't worked. This is exhaust the Russian military and economic power in Ukraine using U.S. and allied technical and financial support to the point where the Russians simply fall apart. Their society collapses, their government falls, and Ukraine emerges triumphant. Well, that's not going to happen. So that's obviously a dead end. And I don't know what it means right now for the future, because it's unclear to me whatever this recent meeting meant. And when you go to the Middle East, there the mission has not really changed dramatically. It's evolved. Ultimately, we went in there to support Israel in its ruthless war of destruction against Israel's enemies. And who are its enemies? Well, it's got lots of enemies, and they're multiplying, Cyrus. They're more and more picking up on this. But as a minimum, we're talking about Hamas, Hezbollah, the Iraqi Popular Mobilization Front, and Iran. Plus, I would argue, hundreds of millions of Muslims who now utterly hate and despise not only Israel, but also the United States. And the whole idea has been to make everyone submit to Israel's demands, to submit to the Greater Israel Project, to worship at the altar of Israel. What was interesting is the more recent discussion we had with Saudi Arabia about working together and developing some sort of nuclear arrangement. Suddenly it all ended abruptly because part of the demand that we insist on was that we go back to the Abraham Accords, which are about as popular as the plague in the Middle East. So that's off the table. We don't seem to have any real understanding or appreciation for what's happened. We tend to view everybody as somebody that can be bribed, frankly, that has no values, that has no roots, that believes in nothing. Well, that's not working out very well. And I think, frankly, that's where we are. We don't have to talk about China right away, but I think we should touch on it because it's part of a Cold War. And I think the Chinese leadership knows it, and the Chinese are winning it. We're losing it. So I would argue that all three wars have turned into losses for the United States. And, to be frank, Trump inherited at least one of those. That's the Ukraine war. I think he unnecessarily created the Cold War with China. He could have gone in a very different direction. Big mistake. And then, of course, he's jumped in with both feet into this morass created by Israel in the Middle East. And that is not going well by any stretch of imagination. The use of ground forces in the Gulf, whether you seize Karg Island or Abu Musa or any number of different islands, or you seize the port of Chabahar, these things do nothing for you. They change nothing. And you are at the mercy of all of these top attack weapon systems. In other words, when I say top attack, I mean top attack. Something comes in above you at very high speed or in the air from your flank, and you can't stop it. And that's what we've already figured out. We can't stop the attacks on our bases. Now, why would you want to put, say, 5 or 10,000 light infantrymen, regardless of how well equipped or well trained they are and well led, into any of these places? I mean, you put them in there, they'll go do what you tell them to do, and then what? They've got to protect themselves. And how do they protect themselves against this top attack system, this ISR strike system, as I call it? Well, you can't. They're under persistent surveillance. If they move, if they talk, if they walk anywhere, they're going to be identified. They're going to be targeted. What happens when they have wounded? How do you get them out? The only island, quite frankly, that has a real fresh spring water source is Karg Island. All the others are rock. So how do you supply the water? Well, then we'll go ashore in Bandar Abbas, okay, a city of 250,000 people. I don't know how many are there right now. And you have the Bushehr nuclear reactor. What do you want to do? Capture the reactor? Okay, you capture the reactor and anybody around it, and what's that do for you? Well, it's a bargaining chip. Yeah, what if somebody hits it with something? Then you irradiated all of your troops. An accident there is fatal. The Iranians can withdraw, they can evacuate. What do we do? When you start destroying all these desalination plants and oil infrastructure, Iran strikes back at everything left in the Gulf. And, we've been saying for weeks, and I think I was on your show before, and I said, well, if we stop now, and that was weeks ago, we can probably recover from the position we're in the Gulf. That is the global energy structure or system. We can recover in 2 to 3 years. And that depends upon ending any conflict, because as long as there's a conflict of any kind, no one with money to invest, no one with money to lend will go in there to finance reconstruction. Right. So nothing will change. I hear people saying, well, they're building pipelines to go around things. That's not true. Nothing is being built over there right now. And why would it? Why would you invest heavily in something that could be destroyed tomorrow? So, the question is, if you go back hard now on the assumption that, well, this time we can get the right target set. This time we can really hurt them. This time they'll capitulate. All of which I think is delusional. If you go back in now, it'll be a decade or more before anything recovers down there, right. Which means that you've not only lost control of the Strait of Hormuz, it's all pure speculation, but we can start from certain, what I would call ironclad assumptions. Zelensky and Netanyahu, part of the same cabal, backed by most of the same Zionist billionaires, who hate Russia, hate Iran, and would like to see both destroyed. So both of them have the same interest, and that is to keep the war going. Whatever you do, Mr. Trump, don't stop. Keep bombing. Keep sending us money. Keep sending us equipment and supplies. Help us to fund more mercenary forces. This is Ukraine, and we will win. Just give us some more time and we'll pull this out and win. Of course, 50% of everything you give these people ends up in bank accounts and in Cyprus and God knows where else, because these people are terrible crooks and criminals. But sadly, it looks like President Trump was advised by his handlers who own him and others to go along with this. So I suppose we'll come out with some sort of plan to send X numbers of millions of dollars and more equipment. It's not going to make any difference. Ukraine's losing this war. The whole posture of Russian forces is changing, and Russia is moving now aggressively west. And Odessa is useless to the Ukrainians as a port now. It should have been shut down a long time ago. And now Ukraine is a landlocked entity of no particular value to anybody. Their Russians are moving into Kharkov. So I think that over the next month or two, Ukraine is quite liable to collapse on its own at this stage. I don't think MI6 or the CIA and hundreds of millions of dollars and any more, equipment can save them. I think they've had it. They're also running out of manpower. And even in the western part of Ukraine, which is the most anti-Russian, anti-communist historically, and I know those people, I grew up with some of them and I love them personally, but they've now turned on the government. They don't want their their families murdered on the battlefield by the Ukrainian leadership that simply treats them as cannon fodder. So I think, unfortunately, Zelensky will leave with a pat on the head, some promises. No doubt, Congress will deliver because they profit from the weapons and so forth that are sent over there. Then we come to Mr. Netanyahu, and of course, Mr. Zelensky will do anything he can to ingratiate himself to us, including, I'll join the war against Iran. Okay, thanks. And now then you turn to Mr. Netanyahu. Mr. Netanyahu has lost the war. Israel is in a very real danger of going out of existence. All over the region, all of the elites privately are saying the same thing, from the Indian border all the way to Morocco in the Islamic world. Sykes-Picot is dead. It will not be restored. In other words, when this ends, this war, the map is not going to look as it did before. I don't think President Trump really understands that. And I think that Mr. Netanyahu is living in this fantasy world of the Greater Israel Project, which means that we are going to fight in perpetuity against everyone in the region, anyone in the region that refuses to submit to Israel. We're not. Those days are over. Well, two things. First of all, most Americans do not understand what you just said about China. They're being told China wants to destroy us. China wants to replace us. Chinese don't want to replace us. They want nothing to do with the reserve currency. I mean, it's bizarre when you listen to people. Oh, they hate us. We're at war with China. No, you don't. You're not necessarily at war with China. You're competing with China, and you're doing a shitty job of competing with China. But you're competing. You're not at war. Oh, yes, we are. Okay, fine. You have the same problem with Russia. I think that the other issue is that Donald Trump can't sign much of anything, because at this point, the best deal he received was the one that he's thrown away. The MOU. That MOU, as humiliating as he seemed to think it was a great opportunity to get out and this nonsense. But he's, the puppet of the Jewish lobby. He's essentially consigned his soul to them. He's mortgaged his life and his presidency to the Israel lobby. That's it. They're not going to accept that. So when this ends, and it will, everything ends at some point, and it could end catastrophically, by the way, including the use of nuclear weapons, because the Israelis could foolishly initiate that. But I hope not. But when this ends, we'll just leave. Yeah. And that's what we always do. And again, I say this to people, and they look at me with blank face. They say, remember, we are primarily an aerospace and naval power. Our army was really pitifully small and not terribly capable.